Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back to the English literature course at the Islamic University, the English department. Last time we had to rush with the modest proposal by Daniel Defoe.
Yes.
And I said the modest proposal is basically an essay, an article, rather than a work of fiction. But in the book, here it's right after the novel when we're talking about the novel, so it gives us the impression that it is a whole story about stuff. So this is prose, but it's an article rather than a novel. Now, in my interpretation of sorry, I messed up. I have to begin again. خلينا أعيد. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the English literature course at the Islamic University. Last time we continued our lectures on the rise of the novel, the 18th century, the Augustan age. And we stopped at Jonathan Swift. And in many ways we said Swift is interesting and different. He doesn't fit in an age where stories generally had happy endings to appeal to the readers, to try, remember this stable and strong England or Britain, the British Empire was seeking, they didn't want change, they didn't want revolutions. His books are generally very openly attacking humanity in general, human beings in general, but also the English society and the British imperialism. As an Irish writer, his writing is different. Now, how much of his Irishness is there in his work, in his novels, in his essays and articles, is something, an issue probably some of you want to pursue later on and look into. But certainly, Gulliver's Travels is a book that openly, clearly satirizes and attacks the British Empire. And this could be one reason why, in a way, he was not received well by the readers, the English, especially the English readers. So his book, Gulliver's Travels, was meant to be a serious satire against humanity, mankind, and in particular against religion, the church, and science, and the English imperialism, especially when it comes to how they were treating Ireland and the Irish people. But the book was soon turned into a book of children. It doesn't mean that books written for children are not important and they don't have the significant messages and lessons and morals. They do. But it was, in my opinion, was marginalized because it was critical. Now, his article, A Modest Proposal, was meant to be a humorous article, also to criticize the British Empire and imperialism of England, especially against, again, the Irish people. But everyone took the article seriously. It was like, come on, why are you doing this graphic suggestion of proposing that the Irish people, because, poverty, starvation, famine, and they had too many kids, he said, I have a modest proposal for you. My suggestion is that the Irish people, parents, should sell their kids to the English people to be eaten. And he speaks about the benefits of eating human flesh and how you can eat it, how you can cook it, how you can prepare it in a very disgusting, graphic way. Many readers were like, oh, but this is clearly satirical. It's not, he doesn't mean it, but this is how readers sometimes take things. They took this seriously, and they took the other book, Gulliver's Travels, lightly. Today we move to speak about Richardson, Fielding, and hopefully, if we have time, we'll do something on Laurence Sterne. Now, Richardson was also one of the most successful novelists of the age. He was a publisher. Thank you for noticing this. Now, in the book, it says that he was one of the most enormously successful authors of that time. But is that because he wrote excellent literature or because he was a publisher? If you are a publisher,
I will publish everything I write.
exactly.
Yes.
But I'm not going to insult him. This is in no way an attempt to insult a particular famous writer, but to give you an idea that people, especially women, had difficulty publishing. And even men sometimes, you would look for a publisher, and so many publishers, and many of them will be like, oh, this is not good for publishing. Readers will not be interested in reading about this. I'm not going to give you this much money. I'm going to give you this little money or something. But once you're a publisher, like you said, you can publish everything you write. And actually, his first novel, Pamela, was meant to be letters, advice to people, to women, etc. Notice the names of his novels. One is Pamela. We'll see in the other slide a novel called Clarissa. The names of women, the names of the main characters. Don't forget, the largest portion of readership in the 18th century were women. So readers and publishers wanted to please them, to appeal to them, to address them, because they would buy this and that. So Pamela is a novel about the typical 18th century woman. She's good, but she is poor. And if she's good, she's beautiful, she's, but generally these women fall victims for rich men, rich people, especially younger women. The story is generally told to us through letters, epistles. We call this type of novels epistolary novels. Yes. What is an epistolary novel? A novel that is mainly built on exchange of letters or diaries, something like this. So he wants to marry her, and she goes through a lot of trouble and uncertainties and crises because she's poor, she struggles, no one can defend her, she's all alone, she doesn't have her rich family to protect her and everything. Mr. B, interesting name, Mr. B. I'm not sure what it is short for. So he's not the first man, he's the second one. He's not Mr. A, he's Mr. B. Could be significant. Okay? He tries to rape her. And we know anyone who rapes or tries to rape should be put in prison. Yes. Should be punished, severely punished. This is one of the worst crimes ever committed. Who's the victim? Mostly it's women. Eventually, at the end of sometime in the book, somewhere in the book, she marries him. She agrees to marry him. He should be arrested, right? Yes. But this is a man. A man can do anything. If a woman does something wrong, a mistake, she's horrible, she's a prostitute, she's a thief, she's arrested, everyone is like, oh. But if a man does this, cut him some slack. It's just the local talk. It's just a mistake. He didn't mean it. Maybe he was under pressure or something. And this is, again, the double standard of the system. Some people, by the way, criticize Samuel Richardson, saying this is anti-feminist. But some readers try to take this as an attack against a society that is mistreating women, that has double standards. What's double standards? Exactly, something for men, something for women. Okay? Where men and women are not equal and the same. So men always have more freedom to commit mistakes, to commit crimes even. And they will get away with it. Okay? Now, the book is about many things. It's about marriage. It's about the power of money. It's about women at that time. It's about the relationships and how powerful men at that time can always win the woman they want, etc. Now, this text, because it was interesting, it was parodied. Very important term we spoke about so many times. Parody. We'll speak about probably later in a bit. Parody, the classical definition is a comic imitation, copy of something, generally a literary work. Now, parodies all over the internet. Every day on Twitter you see parody accounts. Yes. Facebook, parody accounts. Not the real, they're not real Trump, real Donald Trump, whatever. You see Donald Trump, a parody account. And sometimes you can't distinguish between the real account and the parody account. What does parody aim to? To criticize, to challenge, to change, to attack, to satirize. So you imitate something, in a way you change something so people can see, oh, interesting stuff. Okay? Parody. And he names his novel, it was parodied by Henry Fielding. We'll talk about Fielding in a bit. In a book named Shamela. I like the choice of name here because it's part of it. It's the same music. Pamela, Shamela, right? But there is shame here in the word. What significance does it have? I'm not going to give you more details here. This is enough for you. But if you want to know more about Shamela, you can go read something. So, which is the parody? Shamela. Because there's shame here. The woman is shamed. The man is shameless. And parody was very famous at that time. Remember we spoke about criticism and journalism and the rise of the middle class and readership. That's why many people wanted to publish, why many people wanted to read. But parody was one significant literary device that made people write many works. So this man writes a novel, somebody parodies him, and another man parodies him, and another writer parodies him. And thus we have a lot of good literary works. Okay? The other book by Richardson, so this is my comment here, that the readers, some readers, or many, find the moral tone of Richardson's novels hard to accept, especially women. Hard to accept because women in his books are always victims to male violence. They can't defend themselves, they're not strong enough, they're naive, inexperienced. Why are you presenting women like this? Why are you exposing women as poor and weak and helpless? Helpless in the sense that they can't defend themselves.
Maybe he's trying to describe the society.
Thank you very much. Interesting. Don't usually take a literary work as like Shakespeare and Shylock. Is Shakespeare anti-Semitic? Or is he exposing the society? Okay? So Clarissa is another, again, the name is Clarissa, the name of the woman. But it's the opposite. We have here a rich, beautiful woman and a poor man, a womanizer. A womanizer is a man who chases women, goes after women. Her parents say no to Lovelace. They say, no, you shouldn't marry this man. You should marry the other rich man. Arranged marriage. It's always been around for women. Women are always told what to do and how to do and what not to do. It's interesting how this ends because we'll see when you don't listen to your parents, like in Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe didn't listen to his parents, remember? But what happened to him? He became one of the richest men ever. He owned an island.
Yes.
He became rich. Yeah, he went through some difficulties, but eventually he became rich. But this woman says, no, sorry, I'm not going to marry that old rich man, mom, dad. She is convinced by Lovelace to elope. You know, did we mention the word elope before?
No.
When two people, a woman and a man, agreed to escape, to run away, not to listen to their parents and to get married. This is called elope. Interesting word in English. We don't have an equivalent for this in Arabic. If you want to translate into Arabic, you need to explain it. So when two people decide to run away because their parents don't give them their consent, their approval, so they run away to get married. He takes her to London, and London is generally a place for sin, for vices, for corruption, for death, generally. And that's the city in general and London in particular. She lives among the prostitutes, where she thinks because she is inexperienced, she doesn't know people. She's a woman, right? Inexperienced and naive and gullible. And thinking that they are very respectable people. But also, the book could be implying that those people who took care of her could be better than her parents, who didn't listen to her, didn't engage in dialogue. So those people also have morals and ethics of their own, regardless of what job they're doing. Again, because man always wants to control woman, he drugs her and rapes her. Before this, we spoke about also the issue of rape in the novel. And it was considered scandalous and objectionable. Mary Manley, thank you. She discussed this first. And everyone was like, come on, shh, don't do this. Don't expose this. Don't take this out. Keep it inside somewhere in the closet. So he drugs her and rapes her. She dies. She goes, again, generally women react to difficult situations by crying, by going insane, and by dying. And this is in the English literature. A very anti-feminist idea.
Yeah.
But the man, how does he die?
In a fight.
In a fight. A man is a man. He always dies fighting, dies brave. In a way, yeah. I don't want to describe it as honorable, but he dies fighting. When you read literature, when you read novels and poems and plays, always try to compare how people react, how women react, how men react. I was just discussing Oliver Twist in today's class. When Nancy, a character in the book, dies, her best friend Bet reacts by weeping and crying and going crazy, and she's taken to hospital. Her friend Tom, the boy, reacts by attacking the murderer because he's a boy.
Yes.
But the girl always goes insane. This is an anti-feminist idea. Okay? So the woman is still a victim of men. So when we talk about the rules of moral behavior in male and female relationships here, the book gives the impression that this is the norm. These norms are fixed. This is the society. Again, some people disagree with him, but some people say, I think he's criticizing the society. He's not telling women what to do. He's actually provoking women. You know what provoking? Provoking epistaphys, like you should change your destiny, sorry. You should change your life, or you will end up raped and killed. Like this. So raise your voice, fight for yourselves, defend yourselves in a way or another. Interesting thing about Richardson, because he was a publisher at that time and later on the Victorian age, sometimes the novels were not published like this. Like you finish writing the book and you give it to the publisher. You publish it in chapters, like 2 chapters, 3 chapters every week or every day. This is called serialization.
Yes.
Installments, installments. Okay, like 2-3 chapters every week. So sometimes he would receive fan mail and people like, oh, why did you do this? We don't like this. So if many people would disagree, disapprove of something, he would change it in a way to please them.
Yes.
Is this one reason why he's successful?
Maybe.
This is called serialization. Serialization in a novel is when a novel is published
in parts or chapters.
In parts, in chapters, in installments. Now, one of the most interesting writers of this era is Henry Fielding. Listen to me. Fielding is known for parody. I'm not sure how Richardson reacted to this because he parodied Richardson all the time. So he wrote Shamela, parodying Pamela. And also Joseph Andrews, in part, is a parody for Pamela. So every time he wants to write a book, he just goes to Pamela and he parodies it. What an interesting author he must be. Maybe someone can do a presentation about this, to see the relationship between Fielding and Richardson, whether Richardson was happy with this or angry. Like, why do you keep imitating me? Why do you keep repeating what I'm saying in a way or another? I'll talk about parody later on in more detail, but always think of parody as a type of criticism.
Yes.
Okay? So the difference is that, maybe I don't have to explain it much, but when you read the names of the novels, Joseph and Tom, and Clarissa and Pamela, boys and girls,
yes.
Male and female. So this is the male perspective point of view of similar experiences. He calls his novels comic epics in prose. An epic, like before, is a long, heroic poem. Some people say the epic is the grandmother of the novel because it has the elements of the novel, but it's in poetry. And the father of the novel, the mother of the novel is the romance we spoke about in Don Quixote, maybe in passing. So he calls it comic epic in prose.
So
and
they're
comic
prose?
because he will usually focus on the comical aspect, sorry?
Okay.
So Prose, because the novel is in prose.
Yes.
Comic, because he usually focuses on the humorous
Humor.
aspect to make fun of
Epics
himself.
because it's
Epic, because they are long, in a way or another. So usually he focuses on the complicated journeys, and these are usually described as picaresque novels. A picaresque novel is a novel about a character who goes into a lot of adventures and trouble and crises and uncertainties. Picaresque. Always silent. Like dialogue and monologue,
yes.
catalog. Okay. So, what does he do? In Joseph Andrews, I don't want to tell you the story in detail here. There's something in the book, you can read it for yourself, but I want to flood you with information. So Joseph Andrews also again begins as a parody of Pamela, but then he changes it a little bit. And actually Pamela herself is a character in Joseph Andrews. So he's parodying and he's taking characters from other people, borrowing them in a way. It's like, hey, Richardson, can you give me this woman? I need a woman in my book and I want to use her in a way okay? His plots usually show the strength and weakness of human beings. Generally that society, that time, strength of men and weaknesses of women. Women can always be victims. Men can easily become victimizers. Men can defend themselves. Women are defenseless.
Men are allowed to do mistakes.
Women are not allowed to do mistakes. Men are allowed to do mistakes. Women are not forgiven. Men are forgiven. Sometimes they are even rewarded. The double standard. Okay? And that's the summary here, the conclusion. Men always have more freedom than
Women.
Men always win.
They always win. Or even if they die like in a fight. Robinson Crusoe didn't listen to his parents and he became one of the richest people. Clarissa didn't listen to her father.
But she died.
She died.
She died. Okay. Horrible death. Remember, we spoke again about Robinson Crusoe using the first-person narrator, the journalistic first-person narrator.
Yes.
Where the story says, I was born, I did this, I told my parents, I went, I was shipwrecked, I saw, I met my man. Richardson using the epistolary technique of changing letters and diary writing as a way of telling us most of the events of the story. Henry Fielding uses the third-person narrator. Third-person narrator where he tells the story about somebody. He wakes up, she does this, they do that, they come, he saw her, she saw him, she talked. This is called third-person narrator. It's easy to tell. If you open the novel and you see the pronoun I everywhere, I, me, mine, it's first-person narrator. Otherwise, generally, but sometimes he sticks his head and he addresses the reader directly. These people were very conscious that people were reading their books. So every time, every couple of chapters, so he would say, oh dear reader, so dear reader. I think in one, which book, is that Jane Austen? At the end of the book, she says, reader, I married him.
Yes.
Because they know that the readers are following the events and the chapters. So Henry Fielding, Joseph Andrews, he uses the perspective, the point of view of men. He uses the third-person narrator. It's very interesting how the novel in 50 years or less took many shapes, many techniques, many styles, many structures, and many tools.
Which is still until now.
We have more experimentation, but this gives us the idea about the classical novel where it has, generally it has this arch for the plot. Let's talk about the elements.
The start, the
A,
beginning,
B, C. Beginning,
complex,
Lots.
the plot,
you go up for the complication, the climax, you go down for the resolution. Most of the novels were like this. I was born, I lived, had this trouble, and then I'm happy. Or I died, or somebody died, or something.
Yes.
We'll see now
An author who didn't like this. Remember we spoke about poetry and rules of decorum, and there was
Someone
one guy who
John
was
Donne.
no. Sorry, I'm not following the rules. There are always these good people. They will generally be branded negatively, framed negatively, like John Donne.
Yes.
But eventually, many people will praise them, recognize them, appreciate them. This man is Laurence Sterne. I love Laurence Sterne. He's one of the best. What's his name?
Laurence
Laurence
Sterne.
Sterne. So again, like you have many names to memorize. I'm fine with the surname. When you do exams, when you talk, when you answer, just say Sterne, I'm fine. If you're not sure about the first name, but as you grow up, it's better to know the full name.
Yes.
So, Laurence Sterne, one text was Sterne. It's Tristram Shandy. One of the most interesting novels of all time. What's the name? Tristram Shandy. Some people call it Shandy. But the big title is originally The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy Gentleman. If you say Shandy or Tristram Shandy, I'm fine with that. Okay? Now this story, The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, does not follow any of the rules of the stories we already discussed. In my opinion, Laurence Sterne is the John Donne of the novel.
Yes. Because they both broke the rules.
He doesn't like parody. As a matter of fact, this book has also parody as an element and has what we call
Metaphor.
metafiction. Remember metafiction?
Metaphysical.
Did I mention it before? Metafiction is fiction about fiction. Meaning, a literary work that speaks about literary works. A literary work that, in a way, discusses literature. A literary work that makes you conscious you're reading a book of literature. So, simply speaking, fiction about fiction. It's like when you watch a movie, and in the movie,
There's
some
a
people
movie.
are making a
A
movie.
movie. Yes.
So the movie shows you the experience of movie making. So metafiction, fiction about fiction, simply speaking. When you read the sonnet, the writer mentions poets and sonnet writing and poetry, and that examines them in a particular way. So there's parody, and what is he parodying? He's not only particularly parodying one text. He's parodying all the novels of his time. So when he published this book here, 1767 or later, everyone was writing the novel in the same traditional classical way. I was born. I did this. I said that. I traveled. I met. I got married. I had kids. I had a job. I traveled to Europe again. I want to go to America, and then I died. Or I met somebody. I had a fight. So his disapproval of this comes in the form of a literary work. Laurence Sterne, The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy. What does he do in the novel? Listen to me. Now, generally, typically, again, this is the traditional line of the novel. It could be like this, or like this, or like, but there's this always movement, rising, action, and then
Yes,
falling
exactly.
down. Shandy, however, the novel that tells the story, supposedly the opinions, we don't, by the way, have the opinions of Shandy, because many of them are not there. He tells us the story of Tristram Shandy, not when he was born or when he was young. This is a first-person narrative, but before even his parents had him, before they got married.
Wow.
So he begins not from the beginning, from
The very beginning.
before the beginning of the beginning of the beginning that begins the beginning. So, and in this funny way, the main character is born actually somewhere after like 50 or 70 pages. The main character. So what happens at the beginning? He's just making fun of people who say, I was born, and I did this, and I was a kid, and I went to school, and I did something. So, like sometimes people tell us stories, and we tell them, like, why don't you tell us the story of your grandmother while we're here? So, get to the point. Don't do this. Don't give me detailed, meticulously detailed, for example, accounts about something. So that's the significant thing. He plays, he destroys all the rules, the traditional rules. Number one, he doesn't follow the traditional classical timeline of the plot. He plays with the characters, he plays with the time. When you read the book, if you go to the library, the Islamic University library, I think there is a copy, could be 2 copies actually. You will see that the book is different. For example, you know the dedication, the beginning of, you write a book, hopefully, and you say, to my mother, to my teacher, whom I hated very much, and whose hatred inspired me to write this book. To my dog, or to my cat, or to my favorite pen or pencil, or to my Twitter followers. This is your dedication. You find it somewhere in the middle of the book. This is called deconstruction.
Yes.
The table of contents, you know the table of contents?
Yes,
it's somewhere near the end. Some chapters are like 100 pages. Some chapters are two sentences.
Wow.
The chapters are not arranged like chronologically, like chapter 1, 2, 3. Some chapters are missing, like chapter 1 and then 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7 are missing. Some pages are missing. Some pages are blank, like nothing.
Yes.
And he says like, this is for the reader to think of, to fill, to think of and imagine a possible outcome. One page is black, like ink.
Yeah.
Very interesting song. Many people loved this, by the way, but some critics didn't.
Yeah.
Said, what are you doing? And it is full of what we call digressions. When I tell you a story and I change it to another story, this is called digression, deviation, there is tetrad. Like he digresses a lot, and he never comes back to the original story. Maybe in the summer you have time. If you have time in the summer, you can read this. It's a challenge, but it's a very rewarding experience. A lot of digressions. So this is a novel in the 18th century that is not following any of the traditional rules of novel writing. This is called an experimental novel. Experimental? A novel that wants to change the rules, to break the rules, to change everything. It's also a modernist novel. You know why modernist?
He brings new things.
Some people think modernism is in the 20th century. No. In my opinion, John Donne is a modernist.
Yes,
a modernist author, someone who wants to change the classical rules, to break the rules of optic or the rules of writing. So that's modernist.
So Tristram Shandy, in my opinion, is called an experimental and a modernist novel because it breaks the rules and tries to create new things in the way people write. It was Samuel Johnson who criticized this. He said something that is odd doesn't live long. Exactly like he said something about John Donne, criticizing his new way of writing. Now, in the 20th century, this way of writing novels became very famous. We have Ulysses by James Joyce. Sometimes Faulkner breaks the rules. Sometimes Kafka. Have you heard of Kafka? Important names. Many people started, exactly like many poets started imitating John Donne or writing like John Donne, breaking the rules, not following them. Many people started saying, oh, this is a really, it's ahead of its time. So the book, in a way, was written 200 years before its time. This is how genius Laurence Sterne is. This is significant. All my exams are always, including stuff from this guy. I think you should tell. You can tell now what things I like to test you in your exams. So again, what does he do? He breaks everything, breaks the rules. For example, the traditional plot this way, what does he do? again,
Change it.
he changes the order. He's the first one to do that. He wants to show us it's very stupid and foolish to control the events of somebody, to restrict them to rules of a plot beginning and ending. And he also wants to mirror life. He says in life, this is not the novel. Robinson Crusoe is not the typical true life of Robinson Crusoe, because he hides everything. And he shows us several things that he wants to show us. In this novel, he speaks everything that comes, almost everything that comes to his mind, and that's why I'll show you later on. This is a novel that uses a new technique in story writing. But before that, let's see this. This is something from the book. So when he's talking and ranting and talking about details and details, he shows us his life, how his life started. So this is probably the parents, and they're meeting, and they're happy, they're not happy, something. And then he goes back to tell us when he was born or something. So his idea of the plot doesn't follow a linear or this arch form. It goes forward, backward, it goes up, it goes something like this, it goes down, and something like this. This is his idea of the plot in the book. Sometimes it goes down, sometimes it goes up. But his perfect line, he was only happy with this. So in the book, look at the book page 87.
Yes.
Yep. So this is, in a way, what he's happy with. He says, now this is my life. My life is going to follow this line. And by the way, it's very difficult for us to draw a line for our lives, because sometimes we don't know when we're going up or back or forward or backward. But see, this is the timeline. He tells us that this is life. He goes up, he goes backward, forward, down, up, etc. And it's interesting how it ends with this circle thing, like a vicious circle. Vicious circle. That's Laurence Sterne.
So it was first person?
It was a first-person narrator. How did you know?
I am.
I.
The I, thank you. So I, me, my. It's a first-person narrator. He doesn't only use the first-person narrator. He uses something called stream of consciousness. You know, a stream describes when water moving in a canal, like a river, a stream. Consciousness is the ideas in your mind. He doesn't only tell us the ideas. He gets inside the mind of the character. He follows. Important definition. The first one ever, the first author ever to use this technique in narration is Laurence Sterne in his novel Tristram Shandy. It's called Stream of Consciousness. Stream of Consciousness follows the thoughts, the ideas of the characters as they come, as they shape, as they form in their minds. For example, when you tell me a story or you tell me what happened to you, why you're late, if I ask you, why are you late? You say, I overslept, I was preparing a presentation, and then my mom tried to wake me up, I couldn't, I was tired, and I had to have my breakfast, and I took a taxi, the taxi was slow, and etc. You tell me the story, the ideas you think represent you better, represent you well. But what happens in our minds?
Something
It's
different.
a lot. It's not something different, it's a lot. If I get inside your mind, or you get inside my mind, or you get inside anybody's mind, there are all sorts of crazy ideas there. Especially like when you wake up. When we wake up, when you tell a story about yourself, you say, oh, this morning my mom awakened me and she prepared me. She had already prepared my favorite breakfast, pancake, boiled eggs, a cup of tea or something. That's the story. But in reality, when we wake up every day in the morning, we have so many things to think about. Like, oh, another day, I have to go to school, I have to go to my classes, I have to read, to prepare. Oh, my mom is shouting. Oh, mom, stop shouting. It's going to be eggs and pancake, eggs and olive oil and cheese every day, like every day. I wish I can change. I wish I can stay in bed for long. We have all these ideas. I don't want to go out, but I have to go out. This is stream of consciousness and even more. That's why in Robinson Crusoe, I said this about Robinson Crusoe, it covers about 35 years in the life of Robinson Crusoe in 400 pages. So 400 pages, 35 years. In the 20th century, there is a novel called Ulysses. Ulysses by James Joyce. Ulysses. Ulysses is about 1,000 words. K means 1,000. Sorry, 1,000 pages. 1,000 pages. How long do you think does the story tell us about the life of the main character? How many years? How many months? How many? If 400 pages, 35. So how long do you expect? How many years? 100 years?
Maybe before he was born.
Maybe before he was born. So yeah, 1,000 pages is going to tell us a lot of details. Maybe about how his grandparents met, and what came of him, and how his parents were born and everything. But because in Ulysses, the author takes the stream of consciousness technique of narration taken from Tristram Shandy, it covers only, can you guess?
1 day.
Say again? 1 day. Can you guess? 1 week?
30.
You would be surprised.
12 years.
1 second.
18 hours only. How many pages can you write about your day when you go back home today? How many pages can you write at the end of the day? A couple of pages, 3 pages, 5 pages. But if you get every single little tiny idea that crosses your mind about everything you notice, when you're walking, we judge people, we think of stuff, we decide, we always have a conflict between things. So 1,000 pages, 18 hours. How can you do it? Stream of consciousness. The narrator is inside the mind, his own mind, her own mind, or the mind of a particular character. And doesn't reveal ideas, reveals ideas even before they become ideas, and all sorts of ideas. So if you tell me, I went to the cafeteria and I had a falafel sandwich, that's the idea. But before that, it was like, am I hungry? I think I'm hungry. I think I'm hungry. I should eat something before I rush to class, or else I'll sleep or something. Oh, I hate going to the cafeteria. It's crowded, it's close. I hate everything there. I hate the smell of food. Maybe I should go and grab some pizza or cheesecake or ice cream, or grab something to drink, but I don't want to drink coffee. I hate coffee. Maybe something cold. No. I think I am too hungry to drink something. I think I'll eat something. Could be falafel, or maybe not. So, and then you go, you decide, you eat something. So this is the idea before it becomes an idea. When you have so many ideas, and this is stream of consciousness.
Isn't this so stressful to write about? When I come back home and start thinking and remembering every single thing I did.
Of course. Listen, writing about yourself could be stressful, but at the same time could be releasing. You release the tension, the negativity, like you heal sometimes. Sometimes you can't. That's why sometimes we need people to talk to. If you're sad, you're angry, you talk to your mom, to your dad, to your friend. You call her, you chat with her. Are you online? Let's chat. I am not feeling well. I had this thing today with a teacher, with one of my friends. I'm not feeling good about it. And then when you start talking, you heal. You release some of the tension and the anger inside. But yeah, it is very stressful. This one was very successful, and this one is also a very successful book. It's not easy to read, but when you read it, it's very challenging. Very challenging. Something really interesting. I'll try to conclude here very quickly. So, in a novel, we have the characters. The character could be the protagonist or antagonist. Flat or round? Flat, someone who doesn't change. Round, someone who changes.
Change, okay.
Complex. The theme, what is it about? The plot. The classical plot is A, B, C, beginning, middle, and ending, but not Tristram Shandy. He doesn't
Yes.
follow this. The point of view, third-person narrator, he, she, it, they, first-person narrator, I, and then the setting, the time, and the place, and the age, and then the conflict. The conflict could be between people, ages, or inside your mind, internal or external. And finally, that's the novel here. Many shapes, many forms. When we speak about the ways we have the first-person journalistic point of view, the letters, the epistles, the epistolary, the third person, the all-knowing narrator, the stream of consciousness. And we have a novel that can be described as social novel, psychological novel, philosophical novel, romantic novel, comic novel, satirical novel, or even political novel. My last point, can a story, can a novel include more? Could it be socio-political? Yeah, it could be two things. Can the same novel have two different techniques of narrating?
Maybe stream of consciousness and
First person, thank you. Or sometimes it could change and move. It could be first person or third person and also letters.
Yes.
Okay? Especially in the 20th century. The first real experimental modernist novelist to break these barriers and rules is Laurence Sterne of Tristram Shandy. Thank you very much. I'll stop here. Do stay if you have any question, everyone. يعطيكم العافية.